storyteller, phenomenal storyteller. And one of the stories that I liked best when I was a kid was about him when he was a kid. He grew up in Chicago in the 30s, Depression era, nobody had any money. What my dad used to do to get money is he'd go around to the neighborhood stores, sneak in the back, steal their empty pop bottles, and then go around to the front and turn them in for a penny apiece. The part that my dad loved the best, though, that he loved best to tell, was that they caught on in no time at all, but they would still let him do it. They would still give him a wink or a smile and give him a few pennies. And for me, listening to it, I loved how much my dad loved telling the story, and I loved what I got out of it, which I'll talk about later on. Now, my dad wasn't able to make a living stealing pop bottles and selling them back. So what he did for almost his entire career is he either would tend bar or sell cars. His ability to tell a great story made him great at these two jobs because he could connect with people and he could persuade people. Now, my career took a different path. I do presentation training and coaching. So one of the things I do with my clients is I try to help them connect with and persuade their audiences, and inform their audiences too. And what I try to get them to do is to tell more stories. And I always get pushback. They don't want to tell stories, they want me to help them format their bulleted lists or something like that. So they always ask, why stories? What is it about stories that are such a big deal? It has been my experience, and I think we can all think of instances in our own lives where a story had a powerful effect on us. Our brains are wired to think in terms of stories. Our brains have evolved to receive information, process information, and retain information in story form. For tens of thousands of years, we humans have gathered in groups to hear stories. We learn from stories. This ability to learn from other people's experiences is very powerful. So we would gather to hear the village elders talk about how we survived the long winter, or how they slew the great beast. To this day it continues. These are some servicemen out in the field. Servicemen in the field have very intense life or death situations, and they have a lot of downtime, and they tell a lot of stories. These stories might be about the near miss, or about the buddy that never came back, or about how they kept their head down and made it home alive. The soldiers who listen to those stories learn from those stories, and that helps their survival. Now, in addition to learning, stories are a great bonding experience. From our earliest memories, we're read to. We hear stories, we listen to stories. It's an engaging experience, it's a comforting experience, and it's a way to connect with our mothers, our grandparents, our friends, whatever it may be. Kids love stories. Kids love listening to them, and kids love telling them, although sometimes in a very convoluted way, but they love stories. And we never grow out of that. That's why we go to movies, because we want to hear stories. We want someone to tell us a story. So it's a great way for us to learn. It's a great way for us to form bonds and connect with people. We tell stories even as adults. We were sitting over there at the table, and we were just telling stories to each other about different things that happen. In our everyday lives, we share information in story form. Unfortunately, that tends to not translate into presentations and being up on stage. But stories are our natural form of communicating. This seems very typical, right? Man, woman, doesn't matter, we can switch the roles around. But you walk in the door and somebody says, how was your day? And we answer that question in story form. We tell them the story of our day. We don't go to PowerPoint slideshow, we don't go to data. You think I'm joking, but this is not that far from reality. As soon as you hear, I have to give a presentation, right away, bulleted lists, slides, charts, that sort of thing. But that's what we want. You won't believe the day I've had. And if we say it took me an hour and a half to get to work, that's data, that hour and a half. But we're using it to support a larger story that we're telling. Now, in addition to just enjoying telling stories, we love to hear certain specific types of stories. There are some stories we repeat over and over. If you've ever seen a romantic comedy, you know what I'm talking about, because it's the same story over and over. These story archetypes can provide some great structure. So if you want to present information, or if you want to just communicate to someone, and you can frame it in one of these familiar archetypal stories, it can really be powerful. A very common archetypal story is the quest. We have a hero who takes on a task that is clearly larger than themselves. If you have a project, if your team has a project that there's no way you can do it, but you somehow manage to get it done, that's a great fit for this sort of quest format. Rags to Riches is another story format, story archetype. It's really more a story of taking advantage of an unexpected opportunity. Something falls in your lap, but you're clever enough to do something with it. Stranger in a Strange Land is really about a strong hero in an unfamiliar situation, but they learn how to apply their strengths to the new situation. This is the full triumphant, and I love it. If you have what you think is a great idea, and everybody tells you it's a stupid idea, but it turns out to be a great idea, that is a full triumphant story. And revenge, usually it's a little too violent for the boardroom, but it's really about somebody took something from me and I got it back and then some. Boy Meets Girl, and again, every romantic comedy, it's about screwing up and being forgiven. So if you have a story to tell that involves making a mistake and losing customers, but then winning them back, that's a great format. And then the final one there with Tim Robbins, it's a story of redemption. It's a story of losing everything and somehow getting past it. And these stories we like here are comforting to us. Whatever your story is and however you use it, whether it's an anecdote that you include in a presentation, or whether it's a way of shaping some communication with your partner or your employees, we've got stories to tell. Everybody's got stories to tell. I heard a dozen of them at the table right before I came up. My dad told the stories from his own experiences. And the story of stealing the pop bottles and getting away with it, to me, when I was a kid, taught me that, one, there's no shame in being poor. Two, if you're bold and clever and charming, you can get away with a lot. And it served me well growing up. My dad taught me a lot, but one of the things that I appreciate most was the love of stories that he gave me and an appreciation for how powerful they are. I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for having the chance to come up here and share a little bit of that with you. Thanks very much.
So,